today from Tiju's Academy, Tiruvalla. Hope you guys are doing good and you guys are practicing and hope all the best for you. So today we'll discuss in IELTS speaking, let's discuss about the functional language, that's expressions for speaking, part 1, 2, 3. That's the warm-up session. നമുക്ക് എങ്ങനെയാ phrases, advanced phrases use ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്ന നോക്കാം. And as well as in the cue card session, that is the part 2, and the part 3, that is the follow-up session. ഈ മൂന്ന് സെഷൻസിൽ നമ്മൾ advanced phrases എങ്ങനെ യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമുക്ക് let's see. So starting. So as you all know, it's very important to not, just straight away head and stay the same thing over and over again. Same കാര്യം നമ്മൾ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ we beat the warm-up session, the cue card or the follow-up. നമ്മൾ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ let's give it an advanced start. നല്ല ഒരു സ്റ്റാർട്ട് കൊടുക്കുമ്പോൾ the examiner will be impressed and your band scores are going to go high. നല്ലൊരു band score കിട്ടും നമുക്ക്. So let's see. നമുക്ക് ആദ്യത്തെ സ്ലൈഡിലോട്ട് പോവാം and let's see what the first slide says. Right. So it says introducing personal experiences and feelings. Right. Ad endana. Right. So part 1 in the part 1, that is the warm-up session, avade if you have seen my previous lives, I have discussed with you that in part 1, that is the warm-up session, all the questions will be directed to you personally. Ningalde likes, dislikes, what you do, what you don't do is what you will be asked in the warm-up session. So warm-up session thodangumpo, let's make sure that when we give start with a warm-up, let's give an advanced phrases ittittu namakku start cheyam. So for example, ningalku question choichittunde, tell me about an experience that you have, angane parnge ningalodu endengil experience related question choikkuvaanengi, right, you can say that in my experience and then follow on answering that question. Right? In my experience, I feel that ഇതെങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നു എൻ്റെ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ആൻഡ് അത് അങ്ങോട്ട് നമ്മൾ അത് പൊർട്രേ ചെയ്യുക, കൺവേ ചെയ്യുക എക്സാമിനോട്. സംതിങ് ദാറ്റ് യു ഡിഡ് ഓർ സംതിങ് ദാറ്റ് യു റിമെമ്പർ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടൊരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ വരുവാണെങ്കിൽ, ഐ റിമെമ്പർ വെൻ ഐ വാസ് ഇൻ മൈ ഹൈ സ്കൂൾ ഓർ ഐ വാസ് ഇൻ മൈ in my childhood, during my childhood, and then you go on answering the question. And if it's a situational question, adu choichu what happened endanu cheyide, so what happened was, because it happened past tense aanu, so normal parayam what happened was. And then one time, when did it happen, so when did it happen varinga oru question varuvaanengi, one time, right, or when I was a kid, one time this was my experience or this is how I feel. And back when I was a child, or back when I was in college, back when I was in school, അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് phrases പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് in the warm up session we can start with. That is the personal experience. Part 1 ആവുമ്പോൾ we can use these phrases. In my experience, I remember when, what happened was, one time, back when I was a kid or I was in school, college, back when I was traveling in the month of May. അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ഈ advanced phrases use ചെയ്തിട്ട് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോകാം. Right. So these are the in that this comes in these kind of phrases, the advanced phrases, phrases namakku part 1, that is in when it comes to your personal experience and feelings, chodiyalla part 1 il choikina, that is the warm up session. So these are the advanced phrases that you can use in the part 1 session, the warm up session. Let's go ahead and see what in the next session, that is expressing personal opinions. Right, ningalodu oru opinion choichu, അതിൻ്റെ നമ്മൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ് അത് ആൻസർ ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. സോ സ്പീക്കിംഗ് ഫോർ മൈ സെൽഫ്, പേഴ്സണലി ഐ തിങ്ക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഐ ബിലീവ്, അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോകാം. ഇൻ മൈ വ്യൂ, ഫോർ മീ, ആൻഡ് ആസ് ഐ സീ ഇറ്റ്, ആസ് ഫാർ ആസ് ഐ ആം കൺസേൺഡ്. These are the expressions or the phrases that you can use when it comes to opinion based question. നിങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു ഒപ്പീനിയൻ ചോദിക്കുവാണെങ്കിൽ, when you are asked an opinion, when the examiner is asking you an opinion, you can go ahead and use these phrases and start your answering session. For example, speaking for myself, ningalodu oru question choichu and how do you feel about this situation, allengi enganeyilla oru karyam choichittundengi, you can go this, speaking for myself, I think I personally don't like this or I like this പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമ്മൾ മുമ്പോട്ട് പോവുക. യൂഷ്വലി എന്താ ചെയ്യുന്ന ഈ പേഴ്സണൽ ഒപ്പീനിയൻ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഐ തിങ്ക് ആണ് യൂഷ്വലി ദ കാൻഡിഡേറ്റ്സ്, മോസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ദ കാൻഡിഡേറ്റ്സ് ഐ സീ ഹിയർ, they start off with I think. Instead of using I think over and over again, these are the advanced phrases that you can use. Right? I think പറയുന്നേക്കാളും നല്ലത് I believe നമുക്ക് ഇതൊക്കെ യൂസ് ചെയ്യാം. Speaking for myself, personally, in my view, for me, as I see it, and as far as I am concerned. Right? So this is also an important phrase. These are also important phrases that you can use while conveying your answers when you're asked a question by the examiner. Instead of saying I think all the time, I think over and over I think. ഈ advanced phrases use ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ your band score will immediately start going up, right? Because your vocabulary is good here. Now let's see what can we do, and also yes, when we move ahead, speculating and expressing possibilities, right? That is the session la koodal varunu. This comes in the cue card, that's the part 2 and the part 3. Namalde part 2 and the part 3 session speaking il varathilla. That is the cue card and the follow up sessions. That is where you have been asked questions about speculating and expressing possibilities, right? എന്തൊക്കെ നടക്കാം, എന്തൊക്കെ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും, right? So ഇവിടെ personalize ആയിട്ട് അല്ല നമ്മൾ, we are speculating and expressing possibilities. Right? The examiner may directly ask you to imagine different situations, right? Different situations നിങ്ങൾക്ക് തരുമായിരിക്കും a cue cardil, and then you have to talk about the future or the possibilities, right? Sometimes there will be you have to speculate things about talking about something you're not sure of, right? So ആ സമയത്ത് നമ്മൾ when we are going in the part 2 and the part 3, that is the cue card and the follow-up session, these are the advanced phrases that you can use, like I suppose, it's possible, I would imagine that, I'd say, perhaps, and I think it's likely or unlikely to happen, and then you go on forming your answer, right? So these advanced phrases is only used in your part 2, that's the cue card session, as well as your follow up sessions il namakku idu use cheyidittu pogam. Same way as idu nammal parangile. So let's go back one slide and see expressing personal opinion nammal parangayarnallo. Here as well, if you strongly agree with something, right? If you feel very strongly about the topic in question, you can use following other phrases as well, that I'm sure that, I'm convinced that, I'm certain that, and there's no way. E phrases use ചെയ്തിട്ട് നമ്മൾ മുമ്പോട്ട് പോകാം. That's in your personal opinion session. Questions were running about your personal opinion. And here, speculating and expressing possibilities, this is part 2, that's the cue card, and the follow-up session. That's I suppose, it's possible, I would imagine that, I'd say, perhaps, I think, likely or unlikely, idu agam pattathilla. So that's what it is all about. That's the speculating and expressing possibility in the part 2. That's the cue card session, and the part 3, that's the follow-up session. Avadeyana nammal ee advanced phrases use cheyan pattunu, right? And let's see. So idayanu. So what would you do? Ivide veroru options namakku njan parayam. When you use these advanced phrases, the examiner immediately comes to know that you're not using the same repetition. As you know, repetition nammal cheydondirikkumbo, when you're repeating the same words again and again, or you're using the same vocabulary again and again, a sentence nammal idumbo, so the examiner will not be able to give you high band scores kittan namakku chances illa, because you're using more repetitions, your vocabulary is same, right? But at the same time, when you're using advanced phrases like the ones we have mentioned before, your band scores will be increasing, right? Namalde band score 0.5 patringette allengi at least it will be increasing. You'll get a good band score when it comes to using advanced phrases. At least you can expect anything above a 7.58, where namakku easily with these advanced phrases, you can expect anything above a 7.5 band score. Easily you can expect. But yes, make sure that when you're practicing, you use it naturally, right? Don't force them to come out from your mouth, right? Don't force it. Use it naturally in your practice sessions. Whenever you are practicing at home or in your academy or wherever in your institute, make sure you use these phrases, right? And then practice, because this helps you increase your band scores, right? Let's see the next slide. What does the next slide say? agreeing and disagreeing, right? So agreeing and disagreeing part edila varunu, it comes in the follow up, right? In the follow up, right? In the speaking part 3 you will have chances to discuss the topic from part 2. Part 2 il ningalku cue card thannu, you prepare your cue card, then you speak for 2 minutes, right? And then ആ ടോപ്പിക് ബേസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടായിരിക്കും നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോളോ അപ്പ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് വരുന്നത്, റൈറ്റ്? ദാറ്റ്സ് ദ അഗ്രീയിങ് ആൻഡ് ദ ഡിസഗ്രീയിങ് പാർട്ട്, റൈറ്റ്? സോ യു വിൽ ബി ആസ്ക്ഡ് ടു ഗിവ് യുവർ ഒപ്പീനിയൻ ആൻഡ് യു വിൽ ബി ഇൻവൈറ്റഡ് ടു അഗ്രി ഓർ ഡിസഗ്രി, റൈറ്റ്? നിങ്ങളോട് ഒപ്പീനിയൻ നിങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കും, അതിന് അഗ്രി ആണോ, ആർ യു അഗ്രീയിങ് വിത്ത് ദാറ്റ് ഓർ ആർ യു ഡിസഗ്രീയിങ് വിത്ത് ദാറ്റ്? അതാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇവിടെ നോക്കുന്നത്. ദാറ്റ്സ് ഇൻ ദ പാർട്ട് 3, ദാറ്റ്സ് ദ ഫോളോ അപ്പ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ്, റൈറ്റ്? ആൻഡ് ദിസ് ഏരിയ, ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് വെൻ യു ഗോ വിത്ത് ദ ഫോളോ അപ്പ് സെഷനിൽ നമ്മൾ പോകുമ്പോൾ this is a great opportunity. ഈ സമയത്ത് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് നല്ലൊരു opportunity ആണ് നിങ്ങളുടെ conversation skills കാണിക്കാൻ, to show off your conversation skills, right? You can easily impress the examiner with all these advanced phrases and go ahead and outshine and nalla pole perform ചെയ്തിട്ട് and get a very high band score, right? So let's look at some of the phrases you can use to agree and disagree. Namakku ee follow up varumpo, let's see some of the phrases that we can use for agreeing and for disagreeing. So let's start with the agreeing part, right? So when it comes to the agreeing part, you can say I totally agree with this, or you can say I couldn't agree with you more, you're absolutely right, no doubt about it, definitely and absolutely. So these are the phrases that you can use while agreeing. Annoda namakku nokam, I totally agree, I couldn't agree with you more, you're absolutely right, no doubt about it, definitely, absolutely, right? So you asked follow up il nammude cue card anusarichu അവർ ആ question based ചെയ്തിട്ട് നമ്മളുടെ follow up ആയിരിക്കും. And if you're agreeing with a statement or you're agreeing with your question, you can use these advanced phrases. At the same time, let's check what happens when we are seeing the disagree part. So nammade cue card vannu, when you are disagreeing with that question, when a question is put up to you and you're disagreeing with that statement, our statement nammal disagree aണെങ്കിൽ, what can you say? You can say I'm afraid I disagree with this, or I'm afraid I disagree to this statement or to this opinion, right? I see your point, but, and then you continue with your answer. I see your point, but let me put up my point, right? I disagree, I agree with you, I see your point. Ningal paranja point njan agree cheyanengil fine, but I don't agree with your point, but I want to say that that's not the way, this is what I feel, right? Now to the third word, not necessarily, and then that's one way of looking at it. However, I think that my view is this. So നിങ്ങൾ നോക്കുന്ന വ്യൂ ഇതാണ്, that's one way of looking at it. However, I feel that my view is this, right? These are the advanced phrases that you can use in the part 3 session. That is the agreeing and the disagreeing part in the part 3. That's the follow up sessions. നമുക്ക് ഇത് യൂസ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോകാം. As I mentioned earlier as well, using advanced phrases will increase your band scores in a very good way. At least you can expect anything 7.5, 8. Namakku nalla advanced phrases use it, you can go. But yes, make sure all the other parameters also meet, right? All the other, the grammatical part, the sentence structuring part, right? The pauses, the antonyms, adellam nammal use ചെയ്തിട്ട് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോവുക. Right. So let's see once again. Let's go back and check once again from the starting what we discussed today. Right. So introducing personal experience and feelings. This will be in your first session. That is your warm-up session. They will ask you your 4 questions, the questions that's always asked to all the candidates. At the Karinyola, the topic questions were like in what do you like ice creams, or do you like, how do you spend your weekends? What's the apps that you use more? Questions varumbo. These are the advanced phrases that you can use. In my experience, I remember when, what happened was, one time when, back when I was, right? And then this is also expressing your personal opinions, speaking for myself, personally, in my view, for me, as I see it, as far as I'm concerned, right? And And then speculating and expressing possibilities. I suppose, it's possible, I would imagine that, I'd say, perhaps, I think, it's likely or unlikely. And then the part 3, the follow-up. When it comes to the follow-up, when you're agreeing or you're disagreeing, when the examiner is asking you a question, you can go ahead and say expressing agreement. When you agree with something, I totally agree. I couldn't agree with you more. You're absolutely right. No doubt about it. Definitely, absolutely. And then when you're disagreeing with a question with your examiner about a question being placed to you or asked to you, when you're expressing disagreement, it says, I'm fine, I'm afraid, I disagree, I see your point, but, and then you continue with your answer. Not necessarily. That is one way of looking at it. However, I think my point of view is this. Right. Now, we discuss about advanced phrases. Let's see what happens when you're comparing and contrasting. Options. I have not placed it in this slide. I'll do it in the next slide, next live. But yes, when you are when you get comparing and contrasting questions, how can you go about saying that? Similar to, similar to, much as the same. And as you remember, asking for clarification, in last live, I told you, you have an option if you don't understand a question, if the examiner asks you a question. Question and if you have not got it, you couldn't understand the question, you always have the right to ask the examiner in that whole session once or maximum twice, not more than 2, I believe. Not more than 2. So you can ask a question rephrasing, right? So there are times when clarification, madam, you need a clarification from the examiner about that question because you're anxious and you're nervous and you didn't get that question and you're not prepared. You're in the practice question. So you want to go ahead and ask the examiner that examiner rephrase. So for example, let's see. Sorry, I didn't get the question. Could you please repeat that once again for me, please? Right. Could you please repeat the question once again for me, please? Could you say that again, please? Make sure you add the word please because that sounds polite and you're asking something from someone, from the examiner, and he's going to or she's going to give you that question. Repeat. So make sure you use the word please. Sorry, I didn't get that question. Could you repeat that once again for me, please? Right? Could you please repeat the question, please? Examiner And then when in part 3, right, part 3 there is an option. You can also ask the examiner to rephrase a question if necessary. Or a question you can just ask him once or the examiner once. Ask the examiner, he or she once, to rephrase the question for you. For example, a question and then you can ask the question that explain rephrase. So you can ask the examiner, could you please explain what you mean by that? Right? Or could you please explain the question once again for me? Sorry, could you rephrase that for me? We can ask the examiner about this and then you can go ahead. Right. So these are the topics that we discussed today about advanced phrases that can be used in the part 1, part 2 and the part 3 sessions of IELTS speaking. And as I mentioned before, make sure you practice this in your daily practices so that when you practice it, it will come out naturally when you go for your IELTS examination. IELTS in the examination in Pombo, speaking examinations in Pombo, when you practice it at home or your academy, wherever you're practicing, if you're practicing with your tutor, your friend, or wherever you're practicing, phrases, advanced phrases, namal practice when you go to the examination for the examiner speaking examination in Pombo, it will come out naturally, right? Because as you know, a idiom under practice makes perfect, right? So practice is the key thing here. So make sure you use these advanced phrases in all your part 1, that is your warm-up, in your part 2, that's your cue card or the task card session, and also as well as in the part 3, that's your follow-up sessions. So using these advanced phrases will, I believe, help you a lot getting a high band score or scoring a good score, a good higher band score. So hope to see you all next time and hope this live session helped you at least in the way of advanced phrases while using in the speaking part of IELTS. So take care all of you, and hope to see you next time. Practice, and let's see next time. Take care. Thank you very much.